What's up guys, welcome back to Fasterproms YouTube channel. Today, I got a treat for you. Now GM never made a truck COPO edition, but we had a customer that did. This thing has got a lot of goodies and it's really done well. So we wanted to show you all the ins and the outs of what we've done to this thing to make it better. So this is a 2012 Colorado, and it's got a 2012 CTSV motor in it. Full exhaust, it's got a 9-inch. So we had a customer bring us the truck, and he kind of wanted to make a little bit more power to really show you what sets this thing apart. Now it's not just kind of like an S10 style build or a Colorado with a big motor in it. It's really set up like a drag truck, just like a COPO would be. So it's got a built 4L80 in there with a trans controller. So that guy right there, I can go ahead and control all the shift points, and it has a stall converter, a 28-inch tall tire, so this puppy should hook. So the customer brought us this car and really wanted to get things optimized a bit more. We have a methanol injection system. We put our thermal reduction plates in there, which is a spacer in between the blower and the head, which transmits less heat from the head to the blower. It's got a ported blower, ported throttle body. We have a lower pulley and an upper pulley as well. We have an expansion tank, and one of the things that we installed also in addition to this was an inner chiller. So with the air conditioning on, that is actually cooling the coolant for the blower. All right, so if we were talking about a typical automatic LSA with heads, cam, and all the supporting stuff of what this has, this thing should put down somewhere in the neighborhood of a little bit over maybe 700 wheel with a 6L90 automatic transmission and a locked up torque converter. Now the reason I kind of qualified all that stuff is that each of those things is a factor. If it were a manual trans, this thing would dyno a little bit higher. If it had a regular street tire, that would also be another thing. But it does have a drag radial on it, does have a Ford 9-inch, all of which are going to eat up some power. So in the end, especially on E85, we're hoping that this thing makes somewhere in the neighborhood of about 700 wheel. And if that's the case, and it weighs what it should weigh, this should be a 9-second truck all day long. All right, so you get in this thing, and a lot of the stuff is just like it was factory. Obviously, you got a few things like the line lock, and you got your boost and your wideband, but those are kind of typical things for somewhat race truck. But everything else is very tastefully done. You really wouldn't notice any difference whatsoever from stock. Let's crank this thing up here. Now, when we first got this, it had a cam sensor issue, and it kind of wouldn't start up just right and all that. We got all that ironed out, got all the bugs worked out. I think we had some oil leaks and a few other odds and ends, but now everything is working really, really well, and we're really excited to see what this thing's gonna make. All right, let's get a little rev with this thing. If you guys have been watching the channel for a while, you know that I'm a super big fan of a positive displacement supercharger. They are absolutely amazing. I mean, there's nothing like that bottom end torque and the response. It really makes a heavy vehicle feel very, very light. Torque is like strength. It gives it the strength to get out of the hole. It feels like such a lighter vehicle because of all that torque. Now, 1.9 liter blower isn't that big. A lot of the aftermarket Ford guys and the Dodge guys are, they got a much bigger blower to begin with. We're on the smaller end of the spectrum, but we just really need a bigger blower. So if we had an aftermarket blower, boy, this thing could probably make about 1,000. So guys, I use HB Tuners day in and day out as a software of choice. This stuff is really, really the best overall software in order for tuning an OEM vehicle. This should have no problem controlling up to about 1,500 horsepower if we wanted to. Our intake air temperature as we started was 82 degrees. At the end of the pull, that was about 111 degrees. That's really not bad, all things considered. It is a decent amount of boost. All right, so from the middle of the pull right there to the end of the pull, we drop about a pound of the boost. Now that's kind of what happens with this smaller blower, is that we're just not able to, supply or gain boost as we go. Now on that baseline pull where I was talking about, where we made about 568 horsepower, we started with about 12 degrees of timing. Right now I was kind of playing around with it, and we were somewhere about 21, 22 degrees. Now the air fuel, what we're going to be shooting for on the wideband right here is about 12 to 1. Now this wideband right here is showing a little bit leaner. Now the beauty of all of this is that we have the factory O2s, and cross-referencing the factory O2s to see if they're rich and lean and kind of what the trends are going with that versus the wideband on the dyno and the wideband in the truck. Kind of basically gives us 3 different measures of checks and balances. All right guys, so I kind of mentioned that I had done that baseline run, and this run right here is pretty darn close to maxed out for where we're at on 93, but it's the other stuff that I want to share with you. All right, so where we're at right there is, that was our baseline run that made about 558 at that particular area. Given that we got the right spark advance and we've got a decent air fuel ratio right there, now we're up about 60 wheel horsepower right there. So a few degrees of timing, a little bit of that, and the right amount of air fuel can make all the difference in the power curve. Now, obviously I revved that a lot farther. That was about 6,400 RPM. So our air fuel right there is very, very close to where we want to be. We got a couple spots that are just ever so slightly lean. Let's throw some E85 in there and see what this thing's going to make. And then after that, we'll crank up that inner chiller if we can really turn down those air temps. So I didn't make a full pull, but we made a lot more power in that same range. It was a little bit leaner than what I wanted. So that was 702. We're actually up about 35 horsepower or so, right in that same area. I don't have the air fuel exactly where I want yet, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna tweak that and make sure everything's doing what it's supposed to do. All right, we're trying this inner chiller. See if we can get this thing cool enough. Something really bad happened on that pull right there. Look at our power right up there. So our power right up here is good, and then it trails off really bad. Well, down right there, the air fuel just goes crazy lean right there. Freaking tuner life. That's brutal, man. I hope everything's all right. I mean, we're gonna check everything out and see what's going on. But this is not a good position to be in. We're like rounding out everything, finishing everything up. One of the last pulls and the fuel pump dies right at the top end of the pull. Full song. So I'm looking at this and we've been averaging about 70 pounds of pressure. So there we go, 68 pounds. I go ahead and I'm in the middle of something. It drops to 48 right there, and then it just shuts off. We have 0 fuel pressure. So it consumed what was going on there. Base pulse didn't change whatsoever. So the commanded air fuel should be exactly the same. Pretty sure we have a fuel pump that died in the middle of the pull, right at like 5,500 RPM. I mean, you couldn't ask for a worse scenario right there. It turns out that the fuel pump control module was just hanging by a thread, and the last kind of touch of this, he was trying to figure something out, and the plug literally fell off. This is kind of the way that as we received the vehicle. So thank God, could have been a lot worse. Could have had a melted motor. One of the worst possible things you could ask for as a tuner is something leaning out, and especially if it's out of your control. Not fun. All right, so we had to do some tweaking to this, and it is working much better. Before we were at 82 degrees, and right now, look at that. That is 52 degrees intake air temperature. We deleted the front heat exchanger, and now we have pretty much like less volume, but it's much more concentrated in the fact that we are really cooling that air charge much more effectively right now. I overshot the air fuel. It's too rich, so we're not picking up the power that I was hoping to pick up. Air temperature is really good. We got up to about 77, 78 degrees right there, and we're already back down to 70 degrees. All right, 728. All right, we have extracted as much power as we can possibly get out of this Colorado. Now, 728 wheel horsepower and right around 720 wheel pound-feet of torque. Now, that is a boatload of torque no matter how you cut it. It's not just the overall peak power, guys. I want you to think of the torque as strength, and this thing has a lot of it. At 720 pound-feet of torque, starting as early as 3,500 RPM, I mean, it's a monster down low and through the mid-range. So it can really take the mass of this truck and accelerate it very quickly. Normally when a vehicle's off, you're going to have a lot of residual heat from the coolant. We just had the car pulled it forward and the hood's been open. The car's been off for a few minutes, but the heat from the block will travel into pretty much everything else. It kind of radiates from one thing to another. Now with this, with the active inner chiller, the blower isn't really hot at all. It's actually kept a lot of the heat out of it. I touched the bottom of the blower, and I'm actually really surprised with that. That is in part with our thermal plates, but our thermal plates coupled with the active inner chiller really are working hand in hand together. So the top of the blower is not very warm whatsoever. I mean, I would probably say this is maybe about 85 degrees, 80 degrees, and the bottom of the blower, not warm like the cylinder heads. The The valve covers are hot to the point where you really can't touch it for more than a couple seconds, but the bottom of the blower is no problem whatsoever. Pretty impressive how they work together. So let's get this thing off the dyno and go for a test drive and see what she does. Let's see what this thing feels like. That thing just blows the tires off at will. Oh my gosh, that was first gear. Like, I could not give it much more throttle than that. Oh, that is so sick, man. Wow, that felt freaking awesome. Like, I was just holding there trying to grab it for traction right there. Oh yeah, dude, those tire marks are sick. Goodness, that was pretty awesome. I just blew the tires off at like 60 miles an hour. Man, this thing's ridiculous. We're gonna have to take this thing to the track. That's so gratifying with such a little amount of throttle. All right, it is time for our final drive in the Colorado, and I'm pretty excited to see if I can get this thing to shift. It makes so much power that I don't even know that we're going to be able to put this down on without being on a prep track. We had to adjust our shroud, and it's very important that the airflow goes through the radiator as opposed to around it, and that's exactly what a shroud does. With the inner chiller, we had to modify the shroud a lot, so that's what we had to do on our test drive that we did the other night. It didn't quite cool the way that we were hoping, so now we're hoping that it will, despite it being about 20 degrees warmer. So guys, I was trying to pedal that right there, and I mean, I think we're going to have to be on a track that, between the gear ratio and just the fact that it makes so much torque and there's not a lot of weight in the rear, this thing is going to be hard to put down all that power. So let's go give it a shot again. But that is this thing is an absolute monster, and it really takes a lot of attention in order to stay on top of this thing. So if you ever want a chance to just, you know, blow the tires off, blow off some steam, I mean, this is your vehicle. I mean, all you got to do is just going to love this thing. I'm falling in love with it. Guys, anytime I'm out with a car, checking anything out, I take my HP tuners with me. It is invaluable. I mean, you can check anything and everything that you need to check. So right now I'm monitoring the coolant temperature with the and the intake air temperature, and we're doing very good. I mean, considering that it's about 92 degrees outside, our air temperature in the blower is right at about 80 degrees, and our coolant temp is a little bit over 200. We're really doing pretty darn good, especially after taking a beating of what it just did. This thing has been a blast. We've been looking forward for this coming together for a while, and I'm so glad that it's all together. This is just the culmination of an awesome build, and this is like the icing on the cake. So what an awesome experience. I feel so blessed, so privileged to be able to experience this. Too bad this thing doesn't have more seats, because I'd love to take a lot of people out for rides in it. That's what we're doing with our Uncle Sam project. Guys, I couldn't be happier with the way that all of this came together. The guys at Fasterproms making this all work. All the tuning hurdles that we faced and got through, everything came together. We came out on top. This thing is going to be a blast. The customer is going to be extremely pleased with overall performance, and I'm hoping this thing is capable of a low to mid-9. Can't wait to see what it does on the track. Hopefully we can bring you some footage of that sometime in the near future. But man, what a pleasure to drive. I hope one day you guys get the experience of a positive displacement supercharged that makes over 700 pound-feet of torque. What an awesome, awesome experience. So, God bless you guys. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Look at that majestic mane right there.
in.